apprentices and delivery staff must wear PPE at all times in an official workshop. Note that these practical examples are filmed in a teaching environment.
Well, that piece is sitting there quite nicely now. But what happens if it all goes wrong? What happens if you bend your double set and it's too big, for example? Well, let's take a look at what you can do. Looking at this double set here, we can see that I've measured that and that's bent and it's coming out at 50 mil. But what if it needs to be 35? What if I made a mistake? How could I reduce that set now down to 35 mil? Well, let's take a look. So this double set's now been bent, and as we just measured, it's 50 mil, wants to be 35. But you can adjust these double sets quite sort of easy. The only thing you need to be careful of is making sure that whatever you do, you're working on just the bends. You don't want to be adding any extra bends into the pipe, because then it'll lose shape and you'll never get it back. So at the moment it's 50 mil, but I want to make it shallower. I want to make it come down to sort of 35 mil. So what I'm going to need to do to achieve that is to take a bit out of this bend and the same amount out of this bend, and that will make it shallower. Now you can do this using the bending machine, but you've got to be ever so careful you don't overwork it. So let's have a look, see how that goes. The first thing I want to do is to take a little bit out of this bend here. So working just on that bend, so it's going to come out of there. Now if you want to make it more obvious that that's where you're working, you can lift the stock up and down in there to get it just how you want it, and you know that whatever energy I put into this pipe is going to take it just out of that bend there, and it's not going to be adding any new bends into it. So as we said before, it's a little bit of a bounce, so I'm looking to reduce about 15 mil out of this depth, out of this double set here. Okay, so whatever I do to one side, I'm going to need to do to the other. Again, keeping the energy into the bend, so you don't put any extra bends in there. Just give that a little bounce. Okay, that's just a little bit out of there. Didn't look much. But whatever we do now, I've got to do the same to the other side. Okay, again, working on this bend, making sure you don't put any extra bends in there. I'm just going to take a little bit out of that as well. Take a little look down just to see if it's still in line. You can't see that, but it looks pretty good still to me. So let's go back down on here and measure that up, see how it's looking. Okay, so the same as before then. This is the important bit here. You've got to get the gap right here. What it is further on down the pipe, you can adjust in one way or the other. So we're looking for 35. That's still looking a bit deep to me. That's only 45 now. We've got another 10 mil to come away from there. So let's just repeat what we've just done. Again, working on the bend, keeping the energy in there. And the same on the other side. Keeping it in line as you do it. That's where we're working. Still fairly good. I'm going to take just a bit more from both. Drop that down a bit. Again, we're back on the bend. Bit more out there, same again on this side. On the bend again. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. So let's try it again now at the bit where it's important, and that is smack on 35 mil. So that was probably more luck than judgment, because it's more about a feel for it as you go, but then you can move it up and down just by taking a bit out of each bend to make it shallower, adding a bit into each bend, making it deeper. Let's just check it down the other end to see how that's looking. And that's still nice and parallel, 35 mil there. Excellent. Okay, so that's reduced our set nicely down to 35mm. But what else can go wrong? Well, if you're working on the bends, or sometimes you haven't got it in the bend just quite right, what can happen is one of these sets can kick off one way or the other. And I don't know if you can see that on there now, but that one is just slightly kicking over, not running quite straight. If I look down the end of the pipe, I can see that quite obviously that it's kicking over this way. So what needs to happen is this end here from this bend here needs to come back in. Now if it's kicking one way or the other, you can only ever correct this from the furthest bend. So you get your first bend in line and see what's happening to this one to correct it. If you don't correct it, then what will happen is, as the double set's running through here, if that's not running straight in line, it'll throw the whole pipe off of the level. So it's really important that you keep these bends in line. So as we say, this one's going over that way. So I need to take a little bit of bend just in that edge there, just to bring it back in line with the rest of the pipe. Okay, so I'm going to position the pipe into the bending machine, but I'm not actually following the former at all here. I'm just going to try and put a little bit of bend, as we said, just in here, just to bring that over this way. So that's actually sitting awkwardly in the former, but I just need to bounce a little bit in there. So you can see that it's actually sitting across like this rather than right the way around. So now we're just going to give that little bounce, and it seems like nothing at all, but actually that was just enough, and that's brought that nicely back in line. How do I know it's on line? Well, we'll plonk it back on the ground and it should sit nicely on the ground. So let's take a look. So there you can see there, that's sitting nice and flat on the ground. I can't rock it, it's sitting in there nicely. If it's a bit out of kilter, then one of these bends would be lifted off the floor, and that's, you know, a good indication that the bends aren't in line. So you do need to sort that out, otherwise you're going to struggle to get the pipe to sit nicely in the area.